What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Middlekauff Mailbag time. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. I'm recording this before the Monday night doubleheader, which I'm into tonight. The matchups are good enough. I'm excited for these two games. So if you're watching this tomorrow, hopefully they were cool and some fun stuff happened. Pretty sure a tornado just came through my neighborhood. Never experienced a tornado, but my neighbor's tree, which was a big one, he backs up to me, fell into my yard and took out some of my ficus trees, which didn't snap, though. They're currently being held up while the tree is on top of them. Though my neighbor, high-level guy, gives me some faith in humanity. He came over to me. I didn't have to go over to him once, like, the storm and the rain stopped. And he's like, I'm from Missouri. And I would guess he's probably 70-ish years old. And he's like, I've seen my fair share of big-time tornadoes. I lived on whatever that alley's called in Missouri. He's like, I'm not saying that was a big boy, but that was not, I guess they got microbursts around here in Arizona. That was not that was a tornado. And it bounced through our backyards and took out my tree. So luckily no one's injured, and we just have to clear the tree. Worse things could happen, but just experienced my first little mini tornado. So exciting times. Let's dive into the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. Ooh, fired up. It was pretty scary. I'm not trying to be a tough guy. I'm not going to lie. That was intense. Christopher, I've been a huge 49er fan since the Steve Young days. Due to the tragedy with Fred Warner this last Sunday, I fear the team is going to end up like they did in 24. Despite this team being ravaged with injuries, how does this organization rebuild in the next 3 to 4 years and become an elite NFC team like they were in 22 and 23? I really think there's only one way. They have to hit on the draft picks. These guys they just drafted, Michael Williams and Alfred Collins, look pretty good. Those guys have to be impact, star. One of the two of them has to be a Pro Bowler, and the other guy has to be a high-end starter on the defensive line. I mean, there's just no way around that. And over the course of the next two drafts, they got to hit on skill guys. They got to hit on offensive linemen. They're going to have to find, it's impossible to find a Fred Warner. I mean, that's like Luke Kuechly. You don't replace Luke Kuechly, right? You don't replace guys of that caliber, assuming, like, I'm keeping my fingers crossed he can battle back, but I've seen this before. Different injury, but Navarro Bowman had a devastating injury and was never quite the same. So you get these lower body injuries on these explosive players. The ACL, in theory, is not that big a deal, but how many ACLs can Nick Bosa go through and still continue to be the same player? So, and it sucks. I mean, Fred, unlike Bosa, is just the vocal heartbeat of the team. Listen, you're 4-2. That means over the next 11 games, if you're able to go 5-6, you get to 9-8. And with the amount of injuries they had, I do think 9-8 would be a really successful season. If I'm a betting man, I don't feel great about it. Because there comes a tipping point, like the line of diminishing returns, where the dam breaks. How do you replace, on defense, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner? Like, when you think about it, your defense had 3 elite players. I don't know if Lenore's elite, but you had 2 elite players and a high-end player in Lenore at every level. Well, I've removed the 2 best ones. So it's like, what are you going to do? I mean, Baker Mayfield, the run he had on 3rd and 15 was awesome. Guess what does not happen? The run if Fred Warner's in the game. So it's like you just lose these guys. I don't know what you do. And it sucks. The more I think about it, it's just you feel, the way that I look at football, like I grew up loving the 49ers like you, Steve Young. People ask me all the time, like, what's your fandom like? Yeah, I mean, I still root for the 49ers, but it's not the same as when I was a little kid. And I've been lucky enough through work to meet all these guys. Like, obviously I know certain people with the Eagles and the Chiefs, but know someone with the Texans, know someone with the Titans. Have a buddy, John Schneider came on my show and has texted me since. Like, I'm a fan of his. So you root for these people. And it's easy. John Spytek, Jason Light, like you root for people that are just good people. And I have the interaction with them, but I take a lot of away from people that I know in the league that go, I love this guy. He's just a good guy. It's like those type of people that I root for. And Fred Warner, and that's player, coach, executive. To me, Fred, on the character standpoint and what he stands for, like he's everything the NFL wants. High end player, great guy. Like you build the business non quarterback on the backs of guys like him, and they have forever in the history of the league. And it just sucks. Like it's rare. Like, listen, I can be a little cold blooded. Uh, Empathy and compassion is something that over the course of my 30s disappeared. Now I'm having a child. It needs to be more of a factor. But when it comes to my business, I'm pretty like black and white, unfazed. Like I'm not that emotional about anything. I did get a little in my feelings about the guy. That was one of those where, and listen, the 49ers have had a lot of injuries. They don't phase me like that one. Like I felt, and I have for 24 hours, terrible. But also because I just think it feels like it's over. Like I'd be stunned if they're able to kind of keep this together and make. I mean, their starting quarterback. Who knows how many games he's going to be able to play? He's played 2. Is Brock Purdy going to be able to play 6 total games this season? I don't think so. Because how does he play a game and then not re-injure this toe? It's not one of those things that goes away. This isn't a rolled ankle. This is one of those things that just lingers and lingers. Then you play and it gets worse. So they got to roll with Mac Jones, who's also injured and has physical limitations even when he's healthy that Brock doesn't have because he can't really move. So it just sucks. We got to talk about these international games. I'm a Bronco fan, and that Jets game was an abomination for both teams. We know. Can you help me understand how these games are making the NFL money? Local guys here in Denver were talking about Brits in the stands literally having no idea what was happening or any of the rules. It's like if you and I were go to a cricket game or something. A cool experience, but doubtful I'm going to become a fan afterwards. It's just a unique spectacle to be there. The team specifically and the players have to hate these games. Is there any chance the players could push back on having to do these in the next CBA? And lastly, if they have to do an international or NFL package, who the fuck is going to buy it? All these networks would, because they're doing it simply. Again, this is a educated guess, right? Because they're not. I don't think they're going to move a team over there or put expansion teams over there. Logistically, it doesn't work. But it's pretty clear that they want to become more of a global brand. Now, we can argue and dispute whether that's a good idea, whether it's not a good idea. But I do think you can come to the conclusion that in America, they are tapped out with fans. The amount of people that consume football and even our wives and women, more women now than ever have watched football, it's going to be hard. Whatever that percentage is, which is clearly a lot of people relative to the rest of the entertainment business, it's going to be hard to make more than, I don't know, a nominal increase in that number, right? Maybe add a couple of percent, but you're never going from whatever that number is now, adding 20, 30%. But internationally, there are hundreds of millions of people all over the globe that if you can take 4 million people here, 7 million people here, you're not going to be able to do that in America. Like, I know nothing about Bad Bunny. I have no opinion on him because I've never heard his music. I didn't even realize till after the fact that he was the caddy in Happy Gilmore, right? I know literally nothing about him. Obviously, I've learned more based on social media over the last week of it becoming a political thing. The guy hates America, but his music's great and his streaming. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't have the capacity to even have an opinion on the halftime show in the middle of October. I just could not care less. Obviously, when it happens, if something crazy happens, it'll be a big story. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But they're doing it because internationally, at least from my understanding, it's a big deal. So they're trying to gain. It's why they go to Brazil. It's why they're going to go back to Asia. It's why they're going to Germany. They're just trying to add people. Well, who's going to get involved? The streamers. Well, ABC has some limitations. Like, I don't know if a lot of people are watching Sunday Night Football on NBC in these other countries. But when you put them on the platforms like Amazon Prime and Netflix or whoever the streamer is, people have access to it all over the world. And Netflix can claim they're not going to get involved, and maybe they won't. But if they do, it's pretty important to have fans in other countries. Now, we can argue if it's going to work. I would say this. Here's the problem, actually, why I wouldn't say this. No business owner ever goes, we've hit it. We've hit our peak. That's good enough. Let's just ride this out. You're either growing or you're dying. And you can say you get to a point where how big do you want to get? And the answer is bigger, right? I could be content, and this is a tiny, tiny percentage relative to the NFL, but financially, my future children and my life, if I just maintained at the level I'm at with this podcast, with this operation, would be living better than I ever lived growing up. But that's not the way I think. That's not the way most of us think. That's not the way we're wired. How do I gain 20% more people? How do we double our revenue? And then once the revenue's double, how do we double that? It's just the way people's minds work in the private sector. It's honestly, it's the thing I love about America. It's one advantage we have in terms of the way our people, the entrepreneurial spirit, but it also can be, it can create like, why are you doing this? Which I think at times in any business can be a fair question. But I simply think it's because they're trying to grow. And the only way to generate more money, which they're already making unlimited amounts, they want to make more. And they view that these international games is their ticket to making more money. We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves their hotels and casinos, but now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place all your NFL bets this season. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states to come. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. As we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. I've been listening to your podcast on YouTube for a few years now. Appreciate you. This is Caleb. I recently heard you on a recent podcast talk about LaFleur coaching and his decisions on being conservative. As a Packer fan, I think he is conservative because Jordan Love is such an inconsistent player. On the same drive that he threw the 40-yard bomb into triple coverage and convert, he will scramble around and throw a jaw-dropping interception. So how can he not coach conservatively when his quarterback can't be consistent on making good decisions? Part of growing, I would say, right, as a player, as whatever you do for a living, is you got to make mistakes. I use the little kid analogy. I see it with my brother who has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. You have to let them make mistakes. If, me as a podcaster over the course of 15 years doing this, or maybe a little less, you realize what works and what doesn't. But the only way to figure that out is by doing. Like, we can talk about it. I can try to put parameters about you, but eventually you just got to dive in the deep end and figure out how to swim. Once I teach you the basics. And there's some of that with any sort of player. Now, I understand, like, in certain game situations, you trust Peyton Manning more than you would Jordan Love or Bo Nix, because I use Bo Nix as well. But if you're ever going to want to win the fucking Super Bowl, you're going to have games against the Cincinnati Bengals. Cleveland Browns is probably a bad example because their defense is awesome. The Cincinnati Bengals, whose defense blows, like, put it on the shoulder a little bit and just see what happens. You got to have some trust, because if you have no trust in your quarterback, you have no chance to win the Super Bowl. Period, point blank, end of story. So, and I'm not saying he doesn't trust the quarterback, but like you said, he doesn't trust him enough. And your argument is, well, he hasn't done enough to prove that he should be trusted. Most humans, how many games has Jordan Love started now? 2.5 years? He had the year 2 years ago. He had last year where he missed some games because of injuries. Like, this guy doesn't have that much game experience. And it's not like he's coming from Georgia or Ohio State or Oregon where he played in all these big games. He played at Utah State. And I love Logan, Utah. Been there as a scout, been there with Fresno State. Beautiful, beautiful area. I wouldn't exactly call it big-time football. So I don't know. I just disagree how to teach an individual. And if he's good enough, which you did a year ago, to give him a bunch of money, there has to be some level we got to have some rope. And again, I'm not saying to do this in a tie game against the Detroit Lions in the fourth quarter. No issue with being conservative in certain spots. But when you're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, their defense as a season, it's going to be one of the worst defenses in the league. You got to be able to trust your quarterback in those situations. I saw where Florio was saying that not only are the Giants going to get a hefty fine for Daboll going in the blue tent when Dart was taken out of the game, they could also be losing a draft pick. According to Florio, the NFL is planning to come down hard on the Giants for Daboll's interference with the medical staff. Do you think with the fine, plus a loss of a potential draft capital, is justified given the circumstances surrounding player safety, especially with concussions? Clearly, the NFL, because of the situation however many years ago with the concussion lawsuits, is not only very sensitive about this issue, is in cover your ass mode about never getting sued again as CTE and people get concussions, even though we all know what we're watching. And every player knows what they're signing up for at this point in time, right? And I think part of it is they took all these precautions to avoid any future lawsuit. It's no different than any of the companies that you guys work for that make you do certain things to avoid lawsuits. I've said this forever. Do you think most of the owners in the league, like the last 25 years, gave a shit about marijuana? How many of them do you think were getting high on their own? Half of them? But the reason that they tested for marijuana came down to insurance situations. It's why they suspended people. It's not because, now some of them might have had some moral stance about smoking a joint. Same thing with concussions. Like, does the league actually care? No. The optics of it aren't great. Now, he ultimately didn't come back in the game without the doctor's approval, but I would say docking a draft pick seems pretty excessive. But I think Roger would say we can't tolerate anything when it comes to the medical situations of potential head injuries. And we will go above and beyond taking that very seriously. And if we have to levy harsh punishments, so be it. Give us the backlash. What are you going to do? Now, to me, taking away like a 6th-round pick, I'm not going to spend much energy worked up about that. But if you tell me they take around like a 3rd-round pick, I'd be like, that's insane. That's crazy. Like, just find the guy and move on. What do you think about Tua calling out his teammates? What do you think about Tua calling out his teammates and that type of leadership? Is he genuinely stepping up and trying to be a leader himself, or is he just throwing everyone under the bus to distract from a 3-interception performance? His tactic may have worked in the short term, as the media are only focusing on his comments. However, in the long run, who would trust this guy? I think you saw Mike McDaniel. I don't think. I mean, I watched a minute clip of it, was asked, I think the first question of his press conference on Monday about that situation, and he said that Tua was wrong for doing it in that spot. So I don't think he's randomly saying that, not getting his quarterbacks back where he goes, that was a mistake. And I saw former players from the Dolphins say, like, Tua, you're kind of being a hypocrite. Like, you've been late to meetings before, buddy. I can't speak. I don't know any of the inside information on the Dolphins beside what Tua has said, what Mike has said, that people show up late to meetings. Clearly, they have a major issue. And whether Tua's a part of that or not, I don't know. I think calling out people to be late to player-only meetings, I think you could say, what does that serve? What is that going to accomplish? Now, like you said, he just threw picks, and one of the picks was atrocious. 16-3, and they're driving. He throws a pick, and it turns into 23-13. Now, they ended up taking the lead later in the game, but you could argue the Miami Dolphins win that game without that interception over the middle. His first pick was a little freakish. I wasn't paying attention live, but I went back and watched all 3 of them. I mean, the third one ended the game. There's 0 time left on I have no issue with that. First one, bounce off guys. The second one's an egregious pick, in a reflection of his weak arm strength. But I just think it's so easy to get on Mike. It's so easy to get on Tua. Like, this organization is a clown show. It truly is. It's got an owner with a bunch of money. It's got this glamorous place to live. It's one of the more desirable cities probably in the world, Miami, Florida. I just think that the organization, the area, is not conducive to football when it comes to the NFL. Whatever Mario's doing is working. Whatever the NFL team has been doing for a long time simply is not. And I'm going to bet against them moving forward. So I'm sure they'll fire everybody. I just doubt anything changes. Uh, Years now, been listening for a while. Injury to the 49ers. Does the NFL need to intervene and file an investigation into the training staff? What do you think the issue is in hiring the local community college? Did they hire old VA doctors? This is absolutely insane. I don't know, man. I'm at the point in time where I don't have the energy. It's been the same thing over and over and over and over again. And listen, you can tell me Fred Warner's injury was random because it kind of was. Someone fell on the back of his ankle, shoved into him. I couldn't even rewatch the replay that they said was like the PG-13 version. It's funny. I could watch those replays when I was younger on just a loop, just be unfazed. And now Tyreek Hill, have never seen it. Beside when I saw his leg pointing in real time. Fred Warner, once I saw the foot pointing, haven't seen anything. I don't want to see it, but I clearly know someone got thrown in the back of him because I was watching the play. But the league's not going to do anything. And in fairness, I think the Niners would say, look around the league. Everyone's dropping like flies. It's like, well, yeah, your most expensive players are. So, listen, the 49ers surely will fire a bunch of people at the end of the season involved in the peripheral, strength, doctors, trainers. I mean, all those people their jobs are probably in jeopardy. But what does that change? I don't know. I don't know. I'm at a loss at this point in time. I'm not going to just pretend to have some theory because what theory are you possibly going to have? He practices them too hard. I've been in Niner practices; they're not that crazy. They lift too hard. Like most of these players lift on their own. Most of these players, like Nick Bosa, Fred, like these guys have Christian McCaffrey. They pay people hundreds of $1,000s to train them year round. My big picture theory with injuries in general is simply because I think we overtrain in 2025. And I think these guys are so muscle bound. Uh, the training is so football specific, but there's no middle ground of practicing and building the calluses. Because even, you know, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, obviously training got better as time went on, but practice was a really big deal in high school, in college, in the NFL. I just don't think anyone practices football anymore. Yet the games are full speed. So one thing I used to, I remember at Fresno State when the freshmen would get there, they would have to do an acclimation process before they were allowed to practice with the actual team, starting in training camp when the pads come on, because you couldn't risk those guys not understanding the speed and falling into people and getting people injured. So then once training camp started and those guys started running with the twos and the threes, even if you weren't tackling to the ground, they could kind of feel the pace. And the NFL does the same thing. It's why rookies have an original mini camp, then you go to OTAs, and then even in training camp, the young guys show up earlier. There's like an acclimation process. But here's the problem. Training camp practices now are such a joke because of the rules that the games are in such a different universe speed wise. I think you see a lot of these guys falling all over the place because they're not used to playing football. How could they be? They don't play any football anymore. There's no double days. There's just, and I don't know the answer. I'm not saying to go back to like the Junction days or Junction Boys, those days of like Bear Bryant. But what is happening right now is clearly not working. The amount of collisions and guys not understanding the angles, because how would they? They just go from walkthroughs to playing in the game on Sunday. And then all of a sudden you get guys falling in the back of people's legs. This is a question about Broncos Jets game. It's a question about a specific situation. It's when Garrett Wilson, it looked like he fumbled. Turns out he didn't fumble, but there was a penalty and they declined it. And instead of, it was 2nd and 7 and it went to 3rd and 6. I don't know. I had the game on mute at the gym, but I would also argue that was a terrible product. And I'm being very cognizant of not being negative about football. I think too many people in my business can get down on like the product. It's not entertaining. It's clearly more people than ever are watching, and I watch. I enjoy watching, but that game was bad. That was a rough watch. I'm glad that I didn't set my alarm. I kind of came to at probably 7 a.m. Sunday morning and watched a little on my phone, then get out of bed and watch the second half at the gym, and it was awful. I mean, Bo Nix, Justin Fields, the whole thing. I mean, it's just a horrendous product. I mean, I can't speak. I've never been to London, but the games that we consistently send them, like the guy asked earlier, how could the consumer over there be like, this is a good product? Think about when we think about international soccer, we talk about Ronaldo and Messi. We don't even take our own guys seriously. We just think about the best. That's the way we think in America, right? Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Tiger Woods. And yet we just send them like, here's Justin Fields playing quarterback for the Jets. It's like, what? Shows you what we think of these international games. I know golf season is over, but I love to see you sneak it into your normal pod. We separated it. So we got a Go Low podcast and we got a Go Low YouTube channel. We're going to start doing a lot of stuff on the YouTube channel, video wise, vlogging on the course, just kind of screwing around. I got some different ideas. So keep an eye on that. Make sure you go subscribe. As a super OCD golfer, I have a few pet peeves. Can't wear anything on my wrists, can't wear sunglasses, never have non-matching ball in my bag, etc. Just curious if you have any pet peeves. No, I'm the opposite. I'll play any ball, loose towels all the time. I definitely wear sunglasses. The only thing that I have to do because I'm bald, I can't wear a mesh hat, or I'll get the sunburn on the back of your head where it just looks horrendous. So I have to either wear a fully covered old school hat before the mesh hats, or even like the kind of the umbrella hat. I don't know what the bucket hat, some sort of bucket hat, which I've actually been putting much more into a rotation over the last probably couple months. Last year, after Indiana lost to Notre Dame in the playoff, you were very critical of Curt Cignetti and projected the program to come back down to earth in a big way. After they ran a top 10 team out of the building on Saturday, where do you stand now? I think this text was after the Illinois game. Following up on this, because I never answered, need you to answer on Cignetti and your take after the Oregon win. As an Indiana fan, I demand an apology. I thought I gave him a pretty good one on Sunday night. How the thing I respect most about him is his, from a coaching perspective, kind of the entrepreneurial spirit and the belief in his own ability to make things happen. Because he said to Rick Neuheisel before the season that when he left Alabama as the wide receiver and recruiting coordinator, he was making $320,000, which 15 years ago in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, must have felt like $1 million. And he left for IUPI or whatever that I thought it was in Indiana. Turns out it's in Pennsylvania, whatever tiny little Division II school that is, for a little over $100,000. And I used the logic and the parallel that it'd be like one of us leaving a really good job for a third of the pay. He had 2 kids at the time. Even his wife said he was crazy. I don't think I would have done it. No, I know I wouldn't have done it. I was thrown into the life 10 years ago in my early 30s where I had to figure it out. I didn't choose it. I have nothing but respect for people that kind of choose the tougher path when they're doing well, successfully professionally successful. I can't even speak. Professionally successful. That takes balls, man. It really does. And what he did leaving Alabama, when it was clear Nick Saban and that program was a rocket ship, he had fucking stones. And it turns out he was able to hone his craft, figure out how to coach, and turn into one of the best coaches in the country. And to go to Oregon and win that game, they're good. Here's the other thing. In this transfer world, especially at a school like Indiana, he had the opportunity to pick Fernando Mendoza and probably a handful of other guys that he had the opportunity to recruit and then offer a contract to when it came to being a starting quarterback for 2025. And it looks like he picked the right one. So you get credit. Look at Florida State. They lost all those guys, and then the last 2 years they picked the Boston College kid. This year he's throwing interceptions and turnovers every game, and last year was DJ Ungule. It's like that. Those are terrible decisions. Yet he picked Fernando Mendoza, and I'm sorry, Fernando Mendoza. I understand Indiana was good last year, but I'm sure he had some other options. So they convinced him to come. Cignetti's big time. I take it back. I was wrong. I bet against him, and I got to eat crow and learn how to speak. He excites me. I was rooting against him. I'm not going to lie. I was rooting for them at the beginning of the season to go like 7-5. And the more I've watched him talk and the more I've watched his team play, I tip my hat to him. Nothing but respect. They're fucking good. Watching college football, I have a question about how bad these quarterbacks are looking. Is NIL in trying to buy teams instead of recruiting and developing stunning the growth and development of the quarterbacks? Not only are quarterbacks hopping around to the highest bidder, but even those who don't like Manning are seeing their O-lines and skill positions being held back due to a loss of talent. One thing that hit me a couple years ago, talking to people kind of in the college football business, is most of these quarterbacks that are making millions of dollars a year. You know, I was watching the Texas Oklahoma game. It turns out Arch has a bunch of roommates. So he has a crew of people that he lives with, which I respect. I've heard countless stories about the big money quarterbacks living either in a big home or a high rise by themselves. So these guys are almost put on a pedestal. They make more money than everyone on the team, and everyone knows it. So not even just the stunning of the development of these guys bouncing around, but the resentment of the guys on the squad. Where like Matt Leinart or Cam Newton or whoever, I guess, Cam rumors that $100,000. Now, granted, went to his dad. But even back then, it was way different. It was a lot of don't ask, don't tell, bags of like some cash that can't get taxed handed to people. Now you're talking million. I mean, Arch is making $7 million a year. Nico, even though he left a $2 million gig, still is making like 1.5. I mean, how many humans in America that are W-2 employees that don't own their own businesses make that much money? It is a small percentage of human beings, which, listen, if you're good enough, I got no issue. If you're Cam Newton or Tim Tebow or Matt Leinart in their prime, have at it. Tua in college, Herbert in college. Like, you watching some of these guys, you're like, wait, you're paying this guy? Like, Fernando Mendoza's probably underpaid. But there are guys on other teams, don't see it. Like Mizzou, the Penn State backup. Bo Prabula, I think is how you say his name. I watched him against Alabama. It's like, guy's probably a little over. Jackson Arnold, like what's Auburn paying Jackson Arnold? A couple $1 million? That's insanity. That's called a legal scam. And props to his agent, props to the kid for finessing that program. If the truth is, and I've seen this multiple places, that he is making multiple millions of dollars. That is insane. But that's kind of the going rate for these guys. What do you think Florida State's paying that quarterback to turn it over and lose all these conference games? So I think we're human beings, man. And if I'm like a really good guard or a really good linebacker, and listen, I'm making good money. I play for Florida State or I play for Missouri, and I'm making $400,000. It's probably pretty awesome. Because one, I don't even have anything to do. Like I just play football, lift, and kind of go to school. What am I even doing with my money? You couldn't even spend that at the college bars in some of these small towns if you wanted to. So you are living high on the hog. But I look at my quarterback that I think, well, I'm way better than his position. I understand quarterback's more important, but he's making 10x what I'm making. How does that make any sense? So I think there's a resentment element in these locker rooms. I think there's just a lot of dynamics beside even the bouncing around and the development part, which is clearly pretty big. But I think there's a human element of just weird shits going on. With the rise of quarterbacks getting second chances on different teams and reviving their careers, do you think Anthony Richardson can go to a team like the Vikings and any other organization save his career? I think there would be teams. To me, if you're Andy Reid and I can get my hands on Anthony Richardson for a cheap amount of money, I'm all over it. If I'm Sean McVay, if I'm some of these coaches that have established starters that could just work with him on the side, especially during training or OTAs and early on in training camp, he is going to have a lot of suitors, but he's not going to make any money. Like, I don't think the market's going to be very big. And it sucks, obviously. It turns out it wasn't the band that hit him in the face. I guess he had a pole, right? So maybe the pole's in the ground and he's pulling it to warm up his leg, and the pole swung and hit him in the cheek and shattered his orbital. Luckily it didn't hit him in the eye, but what a crazy ass story. I mean, talked about it last night. To lose two guys in pregame warmups to like pretty serious a concussion and a broken orbital. That's that's an unprecedented moment in NFL history. I promise you, that's never happened before. Probably will never happen again unless there's a fight. Uh, but yeah, I think people will want to work with him again for dirt cheap. Look at Trey Lance. This offseason, Jim Harbaugh was cool with working with him, and Anthony Richardson has a lot more physical gifts and is much more talented than Trey Lance. So if Trey Lance can get second opportunities, Anthony Richardson 1,000,000% can.